Welcome to a very special edition of Play Sessions, linked up with the good people at Zoo Labs to bring you this lecture and lab series, and it is all about the power of story. So we're gonna attack from a few different angles today on why, as artists, as brands, we need to leverage the power of story and how we can get out of our own way while doing it. So this is always where I like to start. I think it's a very powerful quote. It's one that I always think about as I process and move throughout my days. The world is not made of atoms, it is made of stories. Let that sink in. The world is not a physical place. It's a place constructed of stories. Hold on to that. Write it down if you think it's powerful. Okay? The most powerful story, though, is the story we tell ourselves. Okay? Every day, we tell ourselves stories. We jump in and out of stories. We live in accordance with the stories that we tell ourselves, right? Now, some of these stories are conferred upon us. Oh, Sham, you're such a creative person. Now I start to believe I'm a creative person. We have a bad incident. Oh, you're such a bad person. Oh, I'm a bad person. We tell ourselves these stories, okay? And they really rule our belief systems. But in order to do this branding thing, in order to do this marketing thing, in order to show up to the people you seek to serve and give them value, to deliver value to those people, we have to move past our own stories, okay? Turning down our ego about who we are and what we believe and understand their stories. We got to get inside of their mind, understand where they're coming from, and most importantly, find the opportunity to join their story, okay? So today we're going to figure out how do we tell stories to join their story. 150. Write this number down. It's an important number. 150 is the carrying capacity for any single human being. Not carrying, caring. How much you can care? 150 people. That's pretty much the capacity that we have of people we have capacity to know and care for. Where does this come from? Well, we just got to big societies. We just got to cities, okay? This is relatively new in our evolution. For the mass majority of our history, our time here on earth, we existed in small tribes, 50, 100, 150. That was our carrying capacity. So in order to have groups bigger than that 150, we had to start telling stories, crafting myths, right? Life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness, the American dream, capitalism. These are stories that we exist in, that we believe in. How you could test this is we can know if it's a story if we can choose to stop believing in it and it ceases to exist. Think about that. If we stop believing in it, it no longer exists. It means it's a story. If we collectively stop believing in the institution that is the United States of America, it would no longer be there if we collectively decided. If we collectively decided to no longer believe in capitalism or money, those things would go away, okay? They would cease to exist. So think about what in your life is simply a story that you believe, but as soon as you stop believing that story, that reality no longer exists. Stories are also really, really, really powerful because they help us understand our inner thoughts and workings, okay? Myths throughout time are an examination of what does it mean to live an internal, sentient life. This is why we continue to tell and craft similar stories, okay? They help us as individuals search for the experience of being alive. Stories give us clues into what does it mean to experience an experience, to be here. What am I looking for through my lenses to find meaning? All of this, a lot of this is happening through story, okay? So, another great quote. In a world of unlimited voices and choices, which is the world we live in today, those who can bring people together and tell a good story have power. I will go a step further and say the power is the story. The point of winning the war is not necessarily the spoils of war. The point of winning the war is to tell your side of the story so that it becomes truth, so that it becomes what people believe, right? So I want to start with a story of odds. Not oddities, but odds. What do you think the odds of you being you are? Okay, let's throw in some variables. You're here on Earth. Earth is a planet hurtling through space. It's been here for billions of years. You're here for a very short 80 of them. You were born to your parents in a certain time, in a certain place. There's tons of variables that create the circumstance that is you, okay? And by my calculations, it's 1 in 400 trillion that you are you here, now, with the ability to listen to this talk. So for me, that means we're all already heroes. We've made it. We are in existence. We are sentient beings hurtling through space in a shared reality. We are already all heroes, okay? So we need to celebrate that. But more importantly, if we're trying to do this brand work, if we're trying to market, if we're trying to deliver value to people, we need to make them the hero, okay? We have to find a way to celebrate them. So that brings us to the central focus, building a brand story. You guys are all talented artists, artist organizations, and you're trying to find a way to talk to your audience, okay? And we oftentimes, in today's world, we get caught up with, what am I gonna put on Instagram? Can I get some likes? I'm going to tell you that I don't think any of those things matter unless you're telling a great story. So we have to focus on them. Okay? Again, joining their story, getting outside of ourselves and what we believe via our ego and focus on the people we're trying to serve. Okay? I always think about marketing as showing up, seeking to serve people with empathy and delivering value to them. Okay? We always want to be delivering value. So we need to focus on them. We need to focus on their hopes, their dreams, their wants, and their needs. Focus on their hopes, their dreams, their wants, and their needs. Okay? This is where we start telling our stories. This is one of my favorite artists. And what I like about him, how he indoctrinated me into his brand, into his artistic sensibility, was he celebrated Black children's joy, unbridled, in action, fearless, safe. All of these things that if you're Black in America, you kind of don't feel. So when you see his art, he's talking to you. He's giving you that. And that is an emotion. Okay? So when we're telling our stories, These are the 4 buckets that I want you guys to be thinking about. So we're either addressing a physical need, an emotional need, a relational need, or a spiritual need. Okay, when we're crafting these stories, these are the places that we want to be able to rest our stories. And we always want to link it to these 2 ideas. How are we showing up to say, you will survive based on what I'm telling you, based on the value I'm delivering you, or you will thrive? Now we're focused on art today, so let's lean into the thrive, because I think art is the extension of life that really does allow us to thrive. This is a quote from Donald Miller. The key is to make your company's message or your artist's message about something that helps the consumer to survive and to do so in such a way that they can understand it without burning too many calories. So the human brain is interesting. The human brain is a survival mechanism. And one of the things that has traditionally been a challenge for us is calories. Today we can get calories all the time, but when we're out on the plains, calories were scarce. So the brain is always counting calories. And in fact, the brain burns a ton of calories. So they say the average elite level athlete can burn between 3,000 and 4,000 calories a day if they're being active. An elite chess master will burn 6,000 a day in a tournament. That is the power and consumption of the brain using calories to digest and make decisions and to think. So when we're marketing, we think everybody is showing up like this. Ready, eager, they're waiting for our message. When the reality is, they're more like Usain. They are literally running for their lives. So when you think about your message, think about trying to communicate to somebody while they're running on a treadmill, because that is literally what the brain is doing. Literally, the brain is processing, and so if it becomes too challenging, you get tuned out. So stories aid in us making sense of things. Humans are really bad at data. We don't do well with numbers, but for some reason, stories help us make sense of things. Okay? We can always remember a story over a set of numbers. My wife works in finance. She's a planner, a director of finance, and her job is basically to take numbers and craft a story for the C-suite to say, this is what we're seeing in the numbers. Her job is literally to tell stories about numbers, about data. Okay? So this is an inherent mechanism that we can use, and we need to empower ourselves to start telling that story. We have to remember, however, that what we say is not what they hear. Those are two different ideas. What we say, okay, is an attempt. That's our first level of branding. We're projecting outward. Hopefully we've done it through a lens of empathy. We're trying to tell a story for them, but that's us projecting. What they hear is whatever the reality is for that person, for that audience. And so in order to hear what they're saying or hear what they're hearing, we have to listen. So it's not just enough for us to stand on the mountaintop and shout out our stories, even if they're for the people we're seeking to serve. We have to then also listen to hear what they hear so that we can change and craft our narratives to better drive them to the value, to the behavioral change, to the action that we seek for them. Okay, so what you say is not what they hear. I'll give you this example. When I was younger and not mature, I would tell my girlfriend, look, I said I love you. I said I love you. Like, how many times do I have to say it, right? But what she heard and what she felt wasn't love, okay? Oftentimes we do this. We think, well, I said X. People are processing, filtering, okay? You have to understand that there is a divide between you and every other complex, sentient being on this planet. There is a divide, okay? And we'll get to that more at the end. So we have to calibrate and tune into what they're hearing. And then we can only do that by listening. How do we look at noise versus music? Okay, it's important. So what is noise? Noise is sound that's inharmonic or inharmonious that you don't like. It just becomes noise, right? So then what is music? It's the other side of that coin. It's in rhythm, it's in sync with who we are, with our mood, okay? So we want to be music and not noise when we're telling our stories. And when we tell these stories, they must be clear in order to execute this law of branding from Donald Miller, okay? This is another one you guys can write down. Branding is repeating simple, relevant messages over time. Branding is repeating simple, relevant messages over time. Branding is repeating simple, relevant messages over time. So write that down. Remember that. Simple, relevant messages over time. Just do it. Okay? So we have a little bit of questions and interactions. So if you have a pen and paper, grab it. Got an iPhone, grab it. Take some notes. Write these things down. Ask yourself, what do you offer? What do you offer? What value are you bringing to the table? How will that make my life better or their life better? How will it make their life better? Answer that question. And then what do I need to do to buy it? What do I need to do to interact? What do I need to do to make a purchase? Oftentimes, we skip this last step. We think people will just know. You gotta be very specific. Need you to show up at this time. Need you to buy this ticket. Need you to come to the auction, right? What do we need them to do to get to the first two things? In play sessions, we always do a lot of interaction, and Marshawn is our figurehead for that because he's about that action boss. So again, we're going to do a little bit of digital interaction here. So write this down. We'll need this for the workshop. Okay. So this is a fill in the blank. My music is for people who believe blank. Or my art is for people who believe blank. My service is for people who believe blank. Fill in the blank. I will focus on people who want blank. I will focus on people who want blank. So fill in that blank. And lastly, I promise that engaging with my music or my service or my brand or my organization will help you get blank. I promise, okay, you're making a promise here, that engaging with my music, my brand, my organization, my product, my service, My offering will help you get X. So hold those. Also, if you have any questions about those 3 questions, write them down now and we'll answer them in the lab. So going back to our hero. Generally, I like to think of our hero as having a problem. This helps me think of stories to craft and tell. Okay, so our hero has a problem. It's our job to identify that problem. If we don't know the problem, how can we speak to it? How can we solve a problem we don't know what it is? Okay. Now that problem will usually sit in these 3 areas. Okay, an external problem. Okay, something outside the body. An internal problem. Okay, something between the eyes. And then a philosophical problem. That's like massive, right? Really big. So in terms of the Death Star here, the Jedis had an external problem. They needed to destroy the Death Star. Okay. Luke had an internal problem whether or not he was going to be a Jedi. Was he worthy? Was he enough to be a Jedi? Right? And then the big problem was the standard fight for good versus evil. In our story, right, at that one point when Luke shoots the laser into the Death Star blows up, we actually collapse and resolve all of these in one huge cathartic moment. And the audience cheers, and we've given them what they want, right? Again, external, internal, or philosophical problem. So I said we need to focus on them. I said we need to make them the hero, so then who do we become? As a brand, we're Yoda. We are the guide. We will show you how to get what you want, okay? We're going to show you how to get what you want. An example of this, don't be title or entitled. I think we all know the story. Title came out, had a big press conference, all these really amazing, famous, rich artists saying, oh, poor artists. Right? This is like the 1% of artists saying, oh, poor artists. The record industry is so bad to us. You know, come, audience, join, subscribe to Tidal so that we as artists get treated better. Fell on deaf ears. Nobody really wanted to hear this message. And one small tweak, one small bit of focus change could have made it a smashing success out the gate. Now they're still going, so props to them for adjusting. If Tidal would have came out and said, the music industry is wrong. They're not taking care of their artists. We're going to do things differently. But in fact, we're going to pass the savings along to you. Because you are our hero. You are who we celebrate. Right? They didn't do that last part. They didn't make it about the audience. They kept it the focus on themselves. And they were the hero of the story. People didn't tune into that. So don't be Tidal. The story is not about us. The story is not about us. Okay? We are the guide. Guide has 2 things: authority and empathy. Authority and empathy, okay? We can show you the way, and we can see who you are. Of course, because Hove did that, so hopefully you wouldn't have to go through that. That is what that bar is telling you. He's telling you, I see you, I care about you. I'm giving you these stories, not for my own glory, but for yours, okay? I'm trying to be a guide. I'm trying to give you game. I'm trying to put you up, right? That's one of the things that Jay-Z gives us, is he always or routinely shows up as a guide in the stories and songs that he's crafting and in the interviews, right? Okay. What was 444? I thought it was Jay-Z's most important work. I don't say best, but I say most important. 444 was a big story. Okay? It was a story about masculine vulnerability. And for black men, it was an opening to share, to be vulnerable, right? To see one of our icons say, hey, I'm going through the same thing you're going through. I'm suffering the same things that you're suffering, right? He let us in. He pulled us in to see ourselves. So, our job, help the hero. We've got to help the hero be a few things. Seen. Every human on earth wants to be seen. Nobody wants to be invisible. They want to be heard. I have opinions, ideas, thoughts, feelings, things that matter. I want someone to hear me, right? You might go to church, you might listen to a song, but you're like, they talking to me, right? They're talking to me. You're being heard in that moment. Somebody else is hearing you in that moment. And you want to be understood. That's the other thing that's happening in that moment. You want to be understood. Okay? So those three things to remember. Write this down. I think I say that a lot. Write this down. Write this down. Authenticity, meaning, and emotion. Authenticity, meaning, and emotion. These are three values we want to saturate into our stories. We want to show up and be authentic. We want to be real. Feel real. In today's world, because we don't need massive audiences, it's more acceptable. It's easier to be who you are, to be authentic, and to show up to an audience that can support your craft, your story, your brand. Okay, so we got to be authentic. We want to pack meaning into these stories, so we want to be meaningful, which is to say we don't want to be frivolous. Okay? We wanted to make it worth time, worth their time. And we must stir emotion. Okay? We must stir emotion. Hella emotion. Not Drake emotion level. That's too emo. Okay? So, again, going back to sort of the thesis of this talk, we want to create stories for humans, not robots. No disrespect to my man Wally. If we think that we're going to use a tool, Instagram, Facebook, whatever, a method, or some other strategy to outmaneuver, to outthink somebody else is just not true. Okay? But what we can do is focus on the humans. Right? What we can do is focus on the humans. So, the story is the emotional journey that you are crafting to move your target audience to action. The story is the emotional journey that you are crafting to move your target audience to action. Okay? And we want to put human emotions at the center of this story. Human emotions, right at the heart. Which leads me to a final thought. Don't forget, never forget Despite what any other person will ever tell you, branding or brand is about feelings. Feelings. That is it. How does somebody feel about your brand? How does somebody feel about your product, your company, your organization? It is a feeling. It is an emotional space. Okay? In fact, the place in which we make decisions in our limbic brain does not have the capacity for language. It does have the capacity for feelings. Now, this is linked to survival, okay? But if we stir up the right feelings, logic need not apply here. I think we can see that from U.S. politics. Feelings will override any logical mechanism you try to put in somebody's way. Okay? So we have to work on feelings. So we talked a little bit, or I hedged into this a little bit earlier, and this is a note on the human OS. This is a note on the human OS, okay? The human operating system. Everything happens up here at an individual level. Everything that you have ever experienced happens in your mind and your mind only. Through your lenses, through your mind's computation, through your experiences. Everything that you have experienced up until this point, that you will ever experience, only solely happens in your mind. So then this is marketing. This is branding. Marketing and branding and storytelling is me as a conscious agent sitting in my silo, using a bunch of tools, maybe some observation, some empathy, and some other things to look at your behavior and try to inception you, to try to throw something to your island that is relevant to you. Okay? That, in a nutshell, is what we're trying to do. We can never get outside of our own mind. There's an interesting thought experiment. We'll talk about it in the workshop or in the lab around that. But you can never get out of your own mind. Good marketing, good branding does a great attempt, and it's calibrated, and it happens through iteration and evolution to throw that idea, whether it's a one-on-one conversation or if it's a product to the masses. You are trying to toss your idea over to that person's island and have it be relevant so that they pick it up and believe it's theirs or own it like it's theirs. We must think about how do we incept. Is that a word? I don't think that's a word. We must think about how do we transfer the idea from our mind to their mind. So that's the talk. We'll see you on December 8th for the lab, which will dive into some of these ideas. Hopefully we'll play some games, and we'll do some fun things, and hopefully at that point you guys will believe me that story is super powerful and that you can leverage the power of story to move your brand forward, move your art forward, move your organization forward. Shout out to the good people at Zoo Labs, and I will see you guys on December 8th.